Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning.
A podcast where we share with you great insights about everything family from over 30 years of parenting 7 kids and over a decade of equipping parents through our Crazy Cool Family ministry.
So let us inspire and equip you to build your best family.
Welcome, parents. Welcome, Suzanne.
Hello, Don. Welcome.
We're just welcoming today. We're just welcoming everyone to...
It's Don's new favorite word, welcome.
Yeah,
You're welcome, Suzanne, to do the dishes. Well, you're welcome, Don, to take out the trash.
So fun. We are talking today. So, all right, here's what's happening. Our last kid, our son, McCade, he's graduating from high school in just a few weeks. And so the kids started asking us like, hey, okay. And we have 4 of our kids that have kids now. So grandkids from 6 to, whatever. What's the youngest? A year?
1 almost.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll be a 1 in a couple
yes.
days. So.
And so they're starting to ask us like, okay, what about the seasons in which you parented the kids? And what were your favorite seasons? Kind of go back down memory lane of 7 kids and the different seasons. And by the way, we call seasons littles, middles, and big. And littles is up to grade school. Middles is during grade school. And then bigs are, middle school and high school. And so we thought, wow, let's do a podcast about that. And let's talk about, and really even thinking about what also, so not only the reminiscing, but also what we've learned and how we can help you parents with your littles, middles, and bigs in today's society, because, now we're seeing our grandkids and, you guys are parenting in a little bit different world than even we did, but the principles still apply. So you ready to do that, Suzanne?
Yeah, I am. And so just a little bit of business. We're talking about how to crazy cool parent this, and this we're going to talk about let's just get real, which we love to do. We love to get real. And so as we talk about our kids, we do want to reference another podcast that we did in season 4, episodes 172 through 178. And it was titled, Who Knows Your Kids Best? It was a summer series. And we just went through and interviewed each of our kids. And I would say that it's probably some of the best interviews that we've had that people have listened to, because they're just super interested in the product that we produced out of our crazy cool family thought process and stuff.
And realizing that we did produce that product, even though we messed them up a lot too on the way. And so, just thinking about all the mistakes we made. I was at a seminar the other day, and they said, you know what, parents, you really only have to get about 30 to 50% right.
Yeah, because kids are resilient and forgiving. But what did they say?
Well, that's the same thing, that you don't have to be perfect parents, but it really is about,
because they're wired to love you.
Yes, and you have, but you can, and a lot of times when you mess up, you can ask forgiveness, and so that helps too. But it's just we realized that, we just started talking about what was our favorite seasons. And
do you have a favorite season?
Yes, I think for me, the middles are my favorite. The grade school, I just love, there's actually 2 different ages I really like. And one of them is when they're young, like about 9 months to about 21 months. And you're like, why is that? Because they're learning so much about life at that time, but they really haven't realized they have choices in life yet. That comes a little bit later, and once they
it's not so much fun.
And then they go through the season where it's not as much fun. But the other thing is just when they're in grade school, because they really haven't gone through puberty yet, and so there's still an innocence about them. Yeah. And but they're fun to talk to, and they're fun to like. Our oldest grandkids are, 6 years old, but both boys. And they're just fun. They're just exploring. They ask the coolest questions. And, they're starting to do, I coached a lot of teams, sports teams. Once they got to be middle school, I just kind of said, that's okay, I'm done. And the school took over or whatever. But so many great memories of coaching the kids, 5U baseball, 7U baseball, and basketball, and just all the fun things. So that's my favorite. What about you?
I couldn't even begin to pick. My kids used to ask me all the time, Mom, what's your favorite color? And I would say, well, today it's red. Tomorrow it might be blue and it might be fuchsia. I don't even know. And so, and for me, like Don, poor guy, he wants to treat me with a coffee, and he doesn't know if it's lavender season or caramel season or peppermint season.
Pumpkin.
Or pumpkin season.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm just wishy-washy. And so I can tell you what my favorite thing is about each season. I can do that.
So let's go into that.
So,
what do you love about them?
the littles, I just absolutely love how squishy they are, and I cannot not smooch them. And I smooched all of my children. I'm smooching my grandchildren. I just absolutely love. I love you mentioned it, the innocence of them. I love their curiosity. I love that they're a blank slate. We get to write whatever we want on that blank slate. Oh, I absolutely love that with the littles.
What about middles?
Well, I was just going to finish with, and I love how big they love. They just absolutely love. And they absolutely adore you. You can do no wrong, in a little kid's
Until
eyes.
you do. And then
but even they cry and love you then.
Yeah.
You spank them, you yell at them, you freak out on them, and they hold their arms up crying and want you. And that's what littles do. They just unconditionally love you because we haven't wounded them enough, if you will, for them to leave, to not want to be around us.
For them to go wanting to hide.
Exactly. And so the middles, what I think I love about the middles is that they're now stepping into the world, and they're seeing things from a different perspective, maybe even outside my perspective, or the family's perspective, and just their read on those things is just always so interesting. And
the questions they ask.
Yes, they're just and so I love the middles for that they're growing and learning at such a high rate, and they're learning about the world, and they're learning about themselves, and there's an instability in that those maybe middle school years, if you will, as they're heading into high school that I just feel for. I say all the time, they're just standing on a bridge, and part of them's looking toward childhood and part of them's looking toward adulthood, and they don't know which direction they want to go. And some days they want to be a child, and some days they want to be an adult, and the parent has to figure out, who am I parenting today? Am I parenting a child or an adult? And I just love that. I just love coming along beside them and helping them grow up, but helping protect the innocence of their childhood too. I loved it when my middle schoolers played Barbies or Legos, and they were still acting like a child or doing childish things. I absolutely loved that.
Yeah, one, we'll get into challenges and things in a little bit, but one of those things is protecting and really encouraging the innocence of our kids. Sometimes we want our kids to grow up so fast, and we want them to have all these things, and especially it comes out in sports and school, but man, what if they grow up a little bit slower?
Yes.
What if we just put the brakes a little bit on the achievement and let them grow up a little bit? I think that we will get,
and the exposure, not just achievement, but the exposure as well.
Yeah, it's like we've got such a performance society today that sometimes we miss the just let them grow up, let them have fun,
be slow. Yeah.
There's actually a book about it. I can't remember what the name of it is right now. I'll try to put it in the notes and find it, but it talks about how we've lost play in our childhood, not just technology, and that there was a time back in the 90s when we started to, it was before technology really, that we started to protect our kids. Right. We started to be scared that they were going to get taken by the boogeyman or whatever. And we started to protect them way more than we ever have. And we've really lost a sense of play and a sense of adventure in the name of protection. And so, but there's a way that you can parent, that you just let your kid be a kid within certain environments and let them fail, let them play, let them do things. And so I think that's kind of in that stage of even going from middles to bigs, is how do you let them have adventure and play in this type of society today?
Yeah. And so that leads to what's my favorite thing about bigs. And that's that they're becoming their own person, that they're growing up, this is when we can start, seeing the friendship that we've been growing this whole time, from the infant all the way through, but we're starting to see it now. And I say all the time, God got it so wrong, because there's the littles and the middles are such hard work, but when they get to be the bigs, they go off and they leave and they're launched into the world, and they just became a lot of fun, and they became a lot of help. And they would do the dishes, and they would do the laundry, and they would do the things, and they I didn't have to wipe their nose and tie their shoes
or other things.
They weren't hard. Exactly. They weren't hard to I didn't have to take care of them, if you will. They almost came along beside, and we're doing life together. And even with them, it's the same thing as they're exposed to the outside world, and as their innocence is maybe being taken from them a little bit. What an honor and a privilege it is to be able to walk beside them and tell them about sex, and tell them about drugs and the things that they're going to be exposed to, and the things
and relationships
and R-rated movies, and they're exposed to these things. And now's the time as parents that we get to share that with them. It's time before they leave our roof. And so I just love that. I mean, I just love getting to be the person that gets to do that with these people that God has entrusted us with. So that's why. So I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. They're all my favorite. And now my grandkids are my favorite. Getting to do that season's amazing too. You just wait, parents, just wait.
Well, I think that's an overall theme there that just says, enjoy your kids. There's ways to enjoy, and we'll get into the challenges here in a minute, but really that's one of the reasons we wanted to start out with this, is like, what is our favorite? Because it really lets us enjoy it. And now we're going back through the littles right now, and we're just seeing
with
grandkids. And it's just, we don't need more in our house. Everybody says, McKay's about to graduate, and they're like, oh, are you so sad? And I'm like, no.
I mean, we're sad that McCade's leaving, but we're not sad that we're going to have an empty house.
We've been doing this for about 30-something years. It's okay. We can, And so I think we're ready to.
You wait. We'll just see in August. Ask me again. Maybe I'll be crying every day.
That's true.
Okay, so main challenges with littles. So some of them are with littles is that they have big emotions and they cannot regulate them. I mean, they're all over the place. Everything makes them cry, or everything makes them throw a fit. They lay on the ground and throw a fit. They just wear their emotions. And as a young mom, I hated it. I did not love it. It would trigger me, and it would activate me, and I usually would mirror whatever they were doing. If they were crying, then I was crying, but I was angry. Why are you, frustrated? Or if they were, angry, I could match them with their anger. And so that was probably, I would say, one of the biggest challenges. As I'm on the other side of it now, and I see it with these grandkids, I actually really appreciate them, because they haven't learned to hide it yet. They haven't learned to cloak it, if you will. And so what you see is what you get, and it's all out there. And what would that look like if we were more authentic as people and we did that? Now, maybe if we were able to use our words and not lay on the floor and kick and scream, that'd be hysterical.
Yeah. Although some adults do that in some ways.
They do it in some ways. Yeah. But I just think that that's one of the biggest challenges, is that there's big emotions, and as parents, we cannot get caught up in the big emotions. We've got to be the parent, and we've got to help them regulate. That's a new word. We've got to help them balance out their emotions and guide and shift them toward words. I can see you're really upset right now. What is it that you want? I want juice. And you won't give me juice. That's what we want the 2-year-old to say, but they're not going to say that. They're just going to yell and scream.
Yeah, I think that a couple of things come to mind with challenges for littles. Is one of them is that they can't. Kids understand more than they can communicate.
Yes.
And that's really at every age. Parents, by the way, as we go through littles, middles, and bigs, they understand more than they can communicate, and so communication is hard, and it takes a lot of work with a little kid. Either at every age of that being a little bit, especially when they're younger. And it's so hilarious to me, because they do have language in their brain. They just can't articulate it, really. I mean, It's so funny where, we watch our 1-year-old little kids, grandkids, and they're just talking like crazy, but we don't understand anything. I mean, they're telling stories, and the stories have it looks like they have plot and they have character and they have inflection in their voices and hand motions and everything, and you can't understand a word they say. And so as it just takes a lot of energy to parent a little well, I think.
Yeah, to teach them the right from wrong.
And to work through the communication issues. And
to know that they're hearing it and they're understanding it. It's just going to take them a little while. And I remember Don would say it over and over and over again, and he would say, "Are our kids dumb?" And it's like, no, we just have to say it over and over again, so that basically, if you think about it, there's a pathway being built in their brain. Don't touch the wall plugs. Why is it that every single child in the world is, attached to the wall plugs, every single one of them? And you've got to tell them no 50 times before they realize, oh, that's a no, and I can't do that anymore. But you're literally building a connection in their brain that's not a good thing to stick their finger in. So teaching them right from wrong, I think that's a challenge with the littles, and we just encourage you to keep at it, be patient, go ahead and say it over and over again, and understand that they know more than you think they do.
And a lot of times, littles embarrass us. They really do. There's a social awareness that they don't have, and so we're in the middle of the grocery store, and the 2-year-old just throws a huge fit. And so it brings out just the worst in us, because all we want to do is it's kind of just want to get away. I mean, it's just so embarrassing. I find with parents that embarrassment is a huge deal, especially that we do not want to be embarrassed by our kids, and it makes us really parent poorly in so many situations. And so, one of the things in parenting littles, if you can get rid of embarrassment, and if you can say, my kid's behavior is not a reflection of who I am, that sometimes...
Or even who they are, to be honest with you, because they're just a ball of clay being molded. So it's not who they are, it's it's just how they feel right now.
In fact, that when your child is throwing a huge fit in the middle of the grocery store, most parents are empathizing with you more than they're judging you.
And those that are judging you haven't had it happen yet. And so they will, so just say a little prayer for them, and just know. Yeah. I mean for sure. Well, and then I just want to just say too, like, just social awareness. They're, they pick their nose. They throw their food on the floor. I actually think it's hysterical. Like, we make the joke all the time. What if we did that as adults? Mm-hmm. What if we did that as adults? And just kind of
like we don't want to eat something. We just spit it out.
Yeah, just spit it out like a little kid. It's like, I don't want that. Blah. Yeah. And so there's so many things that a child does that they haven't been trained not to yet, and they're not socially aware. So can I just speak this into you? And I've said it already a million times, it feels like, but you get to train them, you get to teach them. You get to show them the social awareness, but it's a hard thing with littles, and so just know that.
And I think kind of a summary of that a challenge of a little is just their emotional all over the place,
socially unaware.
And I think then if we can understand that and not be embarrassed by that, and not be frustrated by that, but see them just, even like the questions they ask, they're forming their emotions, they're forming databases in their brains. Actually, all those things are happening, and if we know that and can understand that, then we're able to parent them in ways that reach their hearts and their minds, instead of pushing them away. Because if we do, by the time they get into the middles, we have our own. Okay, parents, think about this. What if you're creating the challenges that are coming with the middles?
Yeah.
Because you're creating distance, you're creating, you might be creating lying, for example, because they don't feel safe with you. And so therefore, when they get a little bit smarter, they learn how to lie, and they learn how to avoid trouble, hopefully, by lying, so that they can get out of whatever they think they've done wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to wrap up littles by, as you're headed into middles, is there's a reason that they're cute, because they're so frustrating. I mean, God knew that he needed to make them cute with their big old round eyes and their squishy little elbows and all that stuff. He needed to make them cute so that they would make you smile, that you would laugh at them, that you would enjoy them. The middles, though,
They grow hard elbows.
They do. They grow hard elbows, and it's so sad. And they get tall and lanky and awkward, and they can't work
that's more like middle school, really.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They can't work their bodies, and they start to smell, and they don't shower, and so that's whatever, third grade, fifth grade. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Well, and even in first grade, I think one of the things that happens, with one of the things about middles that starts happening in the parent world is we start doing activities.
Yeah.
And so that becomes
Outside,
a whole different element that you add to the dynamic. I mean, and when they're little, there's there may be play dates and things like that, but when they get to be middles, all of a sudden we're going to start playing sports, and we're going to start doing, taekwondo, or we're going to do,
swim lessons or art lessons or piano lessons. Yeah.
And many times that can overwhelm a family and it's really a cool season though, because you're discovering so many things. The child's discovering about themselves. I mean, this is the first time maybe they face competition, and so the child is, facing competition in that he sees for the first time, wow, you know what? That kid can run faster than me, or, that kid's a better, basketball player than me, or not. Maybe they are the star of the team or whatever. So that leads us to a different world where they really are discovering themselves, and there's more peer pressure for the child. And that can be, it's just a new world, and we got to deal with it. Just like the little child is handling their emotions. The middle is more figuring out who they are.
Right, and how they fit into society and how they fit into their friend group. You mentioned peer pressure and what they like and what they don't like. I mean, the scripture is to train up a child in the way they should go. And so we were taught that I always thought that was training up the child in the way they should go, and they will not depart from it. That means train up a child so that they'll love God. But we were taught that it was just in the bent that they should go, in the giftings that God has given them, in the talents. And so for us, when we did that in the discovering themselves part is we tried basketball, we tried the violin, we tried piano. I think we did acting. The girls did dance through the church. I mean, so there was a bunch of different activities. The boys played different sports to figure out what are you good at? What do you like? I mean, and so it is it's a beautiful season of discovering who I am and what am I good at and what do I like and where do I want to spend my hours getting better at something.
Well, and it's also in middles is when we start introducing school. And so school becomes, we have grades and we have tests and we learn to spell and we learn to write and we learn to read and all the things as we start. And we start to kind of see, where our child is. Do they like science? Do they like math? Do they like reading? What kind their personalities are forming. And so, and not that they don't form when they're littles. I mean, they say that, so much of our personalities form by the time we're 6 years old. But I think in the middle stages, you really start to see them come out. You start to see the kids kind of start to differentiate themselves. So that's a lot of times where the parent, I've seen it just hundreds of times that, again, go back to embarrassment. Kids striking out in 6U baseball and the parents just beside themselves because they're so, they so want their child to succeed, and they're embarrassed with the other parents around them that their child is striking out. And it's like, wow, man, chill out. They're 6.
Right.
We got, and some of those really, literally some of those 6-year-olds become, really good players later, but but some of them are really, the parents are really super concerned about it, and it's just this age where, try things, figure it out, let them make mistakes. What if they, it's like even with grades, it's time to help them learn how to study on their own. Things like that. And so, we try to, and if they make a bad grade on a test, guess what? It's not going to be that big a deal. It's 3rd grade. It's not going on their permanent record.
Yeah, I would say that one of the challenges of middles for sure is that focus on loving to learn more so than the grade and the result of what they're learning. And so I remember so many times they would bring home a worksheet and they didn't do a very good job on it. And I was like, well, what did you learn from this? And they were like, well, I didn't understand it. And well, what would you understand? You know, what my whole goal with them to walk through the worksheet would be, I want you to love to learn this. How can we love this? What do you love about this? What's a picture on this piece of paper that you love? You know, finding something to connect with, to not so much label them about their worth, that the grade is a number that's connected to their worth, but more about their character of being a learner. That's what we want. We encourage parents to be learners today, and we want our children to want to learn, because if we love to learn, then we can overcome any learning barrier that's there.
And sometimes we may learn love to learn. We may I want to say learn to love. We may love to learn, but we may just have to also figure out, you know, at this age, your kids are figuring out how to do hard things. Mm-hmm. There's things that they don't like. Yeah. And so you know what? I know you don't like spelling, but
we had several.
I know you don't like math, but we got to figure
couple
that
of those.
Yeah, you know, and so this is where you're also training them to overcome hard things. And so, if they can learn to love it, that's great. But secondarily, it may be, hey, we do hard things, and we do them with excellence because that's who we are. You know. The other thing I would tell parents about middles, super important here, is this is the time you impart identity. So especially fathers impart identity. And you do it in the littles for sure, but you know, communication's sometimes tough. When they're in the middle stage, you can talk to them and you can tell them, hey, you're a mighty man of God, or you're a princess, or you know, this is where, you know, you're establishing value to them, so that you want that little girl, when she's a big, that she's not going to sleep around because she knows who she is. Yeah. And she has an identity, and she doesn't want to run to that guy because she hadn't been told who she is when she was in third grade.
Right.
And so you know, and we impart identity by saying words. You know, words have meaning, and words have power and action. You know, when we impart those to our children at this age, we are preparing them to be bigs. Yeah. And we are putting in their belief system from us into them. And God designed it that way. He hardwired it that way. And when we do it well, we empower them to be awesome bigs. Yeah. Yep. And so or can we move on? Should we move on to bigs?
Yeah, I'm ready. Good. You set us up perfectly.
I segued it all, just left it, just throw you that softball to go to bigs.
And I struck out. No, I'm going to hit a home run. So I would say the main challenges for bigs for parents is that our kids are becoming adults and we don't let them. We stand in the way. They want to spread their wings and they want to fly, and we're fearful and we don't want them to. That we don't want them to have the experience, or we don't want them to do that. We don't want them to get hurt. We don't want them to fail. I can't tell you how many parents, when I was working at a Christian school, that would tell me, oh yeah, I did my kids' homework for them because they didn't understand it and I didn't want them to fail. And I'm like, now's the time to fail. Now's the time.
7th grade. Let's do it.
Yes. I mean, come on. I mean, if you can't fail now, if you come in with a safety net now, parents, as they're trying to figure out what it means to be a grown up, then when they are a grown up at 18, a legal, an adult, and they don't live under your roof anymore because they've gone off to college, your safety net is not there anymore, and the failures are a lot more costly. You know, they get in a car wreck, or they speed, or they make a bad choice with alcohol, or they fail a college class because mama's not there to pick up the slack. And so if I could say anything, the biggest challenge for bigs is to let them make mistakes. Go ahead and let them suffer the consequences of their actions. Like, I never set an alarm for my kids. I never woke them up. And if they overslept, then they went in, said they were late to class, they missed the class, whatever it was that happened, because at some point in time they had to learn, and I wanted them to learn while they were under my roof, while I wasn't mad at them, while anything, so that it just wasn't as costly. Elementary school, middle school, high school is just not as costly as the next season, which is college, and then the next season, which is your job.
Yeah, and I think that this also, the bigs, we could break this up between middle school and high school, because especially in middle school, they are going through puberty. They are punks. Especially the boys. They are, what the girls are going through, so many emotional adjustments, and Suzanne always says they become 2-year-olds, or 2-year-olds with freedoms, and so. And that's really true.
Well, they're kind of like butterflies. They're cocoons. They literally are like a caterpillar. They were a caterpillar. Those little middles were a caterpillar. And as they go from middles to bigs, they are in a cocoon. And they withdraw, and they go to their room, and they don't want to be around you because they can't figure out what they think or feel about anything. And mom and dad are so annoying.
Yeah, especially in middle school. But what happens is, when we let them, we're creating, like Suzanne talks about, the bridge. And when we create opportunities when they can fail and have a safety net to be able to fail, then we build their confidence. What if failure builds confidence?
Yeah.
What if the way we respond, our pastor was talking about this today, it's not the circumstance that's the issue, it's how we respond to the circumstance. Mm-hmm. And if you can teach your kid to respond to circumstances in a great way, and starts with the parents responding to the circumstances in a great way, then that kid becomes resilient. And that's what we want. We want to build resilient, confident kids. And the other thing I would say about that is that also is happening with their belief system.
Yeah.
Because as they go from grade school to being to middle school and becoming a big, they start to, and sometimes we never know whether it's going to happen at 12 or 14 or whatever, but it's going to happen. They're going to start to challenge the belief system. Mm-hmm. Do I really believe what my parents believe? Do I really believe what my church believes? And many times, again, parents freak out and they want to do their homework for their kids. They want to do the tests for their kids. And instead of just saying, okay, let's talk about that.
Right.
Why did that, if God is so good, why did just Joey's parents get a divorce? Mm-hmm. You know what? That's a great question. What do you think about that?
Yeah.
And let's study the Bible and see what it says. And because really, the cool deal is we've got a great way of life we're selling to them. The ways of God are hard, but they're great, and they bring joy and life and hope and love. And if we do it well with them, they will own their own faith, in the middle of being bigs. Mm-hmm. And then they have the joy of being with God through the high school years when a lot of the temptations are coming.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so great that one of the main challenges of bigs is they are transferring their parents' faith to their own faith. And so one of the most practical things you can do is get them surrounded by godly people. Make sure their friends that they are around love God. Make sure, if you're not involved in a local church, in a church group where they're around people that believe in God and love God and are worshiping God and are serving God, then now's the time for sure to do that, because the challenge with bigs is that they transfer, as they're learning their own belief systems, they're also transferring their loyalties from their parents to their friends. They're much more society oriented than family and home oriented. And I just think that that's God's helping them grow up and prepare. He's opening their eyes and their minds to the bigger world. They're not going to live in the tiny little bubble that they've lived in their whole lives. I think it's God's perfect plan. And I mean, obviously he put it at this age. And so what do we do as parents to come along beside these teenagers and help them with their whole belief system, not just in what they believe in God, but what they believe in what the world says about drugs and sex and all the hot buttons, all the hot topics. What did they believe? They probably know what you believe. You've probably told them back when they were in the middles, but now it's time for you to ask them what they believe and help them form what they believe, because reality is they're going to be hit with it. They are going to be asked they're going to be asked to stand on their belief. And what are they going to say?
And here's one of the things, if you don't get with Biggs, if you don't get anything out of this podcast, maybe take this home with you. Because somebody said it to us a long time ago, and it dramatically changed our view of teenagers. Teenage rebellion is not inevitable. Teenage rebellion is not inevitable. The world tells you, yeah, you're not going to be able to control them. They're out of control. You're going to lose them. You're not going to have a relationship with them. And that may be true for some families, but it doesn't have to be.
Right. And the practical statement there is you're absolutely right. You're not going to be able to control them. And if you do try to control them, then the result will be the rebellion.
Yeah,
and so know that because they're going to run from you, because they're trying to grow up. They're trying to spread their wings. They're trying to be an adult. And when you come in with your control mechanisms, then the only thing they can do to continue to grow up is to rebel.
Well, and I mean, when you believe that teenage rebellion is not inevitable, and let's look at a corollary belief. Teenagers are fun. Teenagers are life-giving. Teenagers are great things to invest in your family. Well, then it just changes your whole attitude about how you're going to deal with them. And you're not going to try to control them as much or lecture them, or you realize the dangers of it, that you're actually, sometimes we tell parents, what if you're helping to create the rebellion?
Right.
You know, what if
chances are you are.
What if your actions are actually helping to create it? Think about what it did for you growing up when your parents were over controlling, or they didn't listen, and they were always on you or whatever. Man, the last thing you want to do is have a conversation with them about it and share your heart.
Yeah.
Well, what if we flip that and say, how do I get my kid to share their heart? And how do I do things how do I talk to them in ways that will honor them? For one, I think that's another challenge for parents with teenagers is we need to honor them. And sometimes they're not super honorable because they are dealing with their emotions, or they're trying things we'd rather them not try, or they're pushing the limits or whatever. And so it's easy for us to,
or we've been rude to them. I mean, and we've not honored them yet. And so there's not a culture of honor in our home. And so if you come in and you start treating them with honor, they don't know what to do because you've not treated them that way before. And so, but I do think that is I'm so glad you brought that up. That's a huge key with Biggs, is to treat them with honor. Just think about it. How do you want to be treated? How would you be treated? You know, your teenager might not deserve it, but what would it look like if you treated them like you do the employees at work? I mean, and so if you did that, if you treated them like the adult that they're trying to be, what kind of response are you going to get from them?
Jesus said in Matthew 15, we get parents all the time say, I don't need to be friends with my kids. I'm their parents. And we, by the way, and we agree that you're their parents. But Jesus said in Matthew 15 to his disciples who were teenagers, he said, I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I've called you friends because, and I think this is key, because everything the Father has made known to me, I have made known to you. That's what we're trying to do when we lecture them and when we dishonor them. So often with great intentions, our goal is to impart to them what the Father has made known to us. What life has made known. We're trying to get them to understand so they don't make the mistakes we did.
Right.
But Jesus didn't do it that way. He no longer called them servants. He called them friends. Now, when he called them friends, he was still their rabbi.
Right. He was still their authority.
He did not give up his position as rabbi in order to befriend them. And when we can understand that, that is such a huge concept with Biggs to me, because if you understand how to be a friend and a rabbi, you will reach their heart.
Well, and just to clarify the word servant, I mean, that word doesn't resonate with us anymore because our kids are not our servant. And so what if we just say less than? That a servant was considered less than in that day. And so for some reason, we think that our children are less than us.
Yeah.
You know, and in reality is, I mean, I guess they are. They're less than us in age. They're less than us in maturity. They're less than us in experiences, but they're not less less than us in being a person and being treated like a person.
And they're not
being
less than us in
honored.
being a child of God.
Yes, exactly. That we
in
are
fact,
equal
in fact,
that.
what Jesus said is,
they are more than
yeah,
us.
Yeah, let the little children come to me. He wants us
And
to
be like a child.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the last thing I'll probably say about. I mean, maybe it's the last thing, but is about Biggs. Is that what was it like when you were a teenager?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
And so, because that's what Jesus says. Hey, if you become like a child, you really do, and it's not a child from a spiritual maturity standpoint. It's childlike wonder, and that really works for all capacities. Yeah. Is the littles have wonder in certain ways. The
and
middles
can teach us actually.
And the middles have wonder in certain ways, and throughout littles, middles, and bigs, they're all building that database. They're all building that database of wonder and beliefs. And what if we met them where they are with our sense of wonder and beliefs? We became more like a child. We understood them better.
Yeah. And so so good. I just feel like the last topic, I guess, that I want to bring up, and it's probably can go through all the different little, middles, and bigs, is the word responsibility. And that we can do that along the way for all of them. The littles can be responsible for picking up after themselves, cleaning up after themselves. If they throw their food on the floor, then you get them down on the floor and you help them clean it up. The middles, that's when they're starting to go to school. They're going to start being responsible for their own grades, their backpack. You do that for them. I mean, don't do that for them. Allow them to do it. But when we get to the bigs, that's a really big challenge because there's a lot of responsibilities that are coming at them. They're learning how to drive. I mean, they need to,
sports teams and different commitments.
They need to be doing their own laundry by this point. They need to be able to cook for themselves. They need to be able to.
They got a phone. How to deal with their phone and all.
Yes, they need
technology.
to be. You don't ever need to tell a big to shower. They need to be doing that on their own. That their hygiene, and so there's a whole list of responsibilities that need to be happening for bigs that sometimes we as parents are continuing to do. And so,
and sometimes we even, and I think some of our kids said, hey, when they were 18, 19, 20 in college or whatever, hey, you guys never told me about this. And so, I mean, we had some things that we wish we would have done different, not just innocence, but I mean, even hygiene things, so often, I know with my boys, I didn't really, have some of the conversations about, things like deodorant.
Teach me how to shave. Like one of them said, Dad, you didn't teach me how to shave. You didn't teach me how to tie a tie.
Yeah.
And we're like, oops, our bad.
I know, exactly. And so, and I just, honestly, man, I didn't think about it. And I mean, I've been happy to teach them, things like that. But I mean, so thinking about what
the girls, I don't think I taught them how to clean the house. Yeah. I mean, their husbands are like, girl, clean your house. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, and so we just want to give you, so we have it, we were trying to do like a crazy cool concept, a CCC, and so today's CCC is crazy cool commitment, and what we want you to do is, we've talked about all these things, and we've got some practical things that we want you to commit to. For example, with the littles, something practical would be choose not to be embarrassed when your kid does something embarrassing. Just choose not to be. Laugh about it. Understand. You can even, if there's somebody on the grocery store aisle and your kid's throwing your fit, you can look at them and say something like, "I did that when I was their age," or just something to bring comedy into
you could say,
it.
I bet you did that when you were their age.
Did you have a kid that did that? Yeah. And then like the middles, your practical thing to do with your middles is, Don said it so well, is to impart identity. Tell them who they are. Yeah. You are a child of God. You are a mighty warrior.
I'm so glad you're in our family.
Yes.
You bless me with everything you do.
You're handpicked by God. Yes. And so that's a practical thing to do for your middles. And then your bigs, Don said it so well. Remember what it was like to be a teenager. Your practical thing is to empathize and to go back to when you were a teenager and think, how did I want to be treated then? And apply that to the relationship you have with your teenager now.
And if that's too hard for you, then I have another one for you with
Okay,
bigs.
good. You get an option, A or B.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just to ask questions.
Yeah,
ask inquisitive questions.
You can do that for all of them, actually.
You're
it's
right.
a great practical.
But I we talk about this. If you've listened to our podcast, you're like, how many times are they ever going to tell us to ask a quiz the question? Because it's so valuable. I mean, and with your kids, especially, it also works with your wife too, or your spouse, to just say, hey, tell me about that. Tell me more.
How do you feel about that? What do you think about that?
Yeah.
If they're a feeler or a thinker.
Literally 3 words. Tell me more.
And then tell me more. Yeah. What do you think? What do you feel? And then tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more. Oh, that's good. I'm glad you brought that up.
So your commitment, they are. And last thing, as we wrap up, is that the stages are different. Our Crazy Cool Family Resources, we designed all of our curriculum to work with any age kid. So parents will ask us sometimes, well, how do I, how do I listen to my 3-year-old? It's different than listening to your 15-year-old, but you still listen. You still develop the listening, the concept of listening still works. And so, but parenting a little is different than parenting a middle, which is different than parenting a big. And so realize that there's stages, and we went through them a little bit about where their emotions are and how they're, what's happening in middles and how it's all expanding as bigs. Meet your kid where they are and watch them respond to you.
Mm-hmm.
And and so and really watch that relationship, because if you have a great relationship with your little, middle, or big, you're going to get the benefit of that, and they will respond to you, and they will become a better kid, no doubt. Anything else you want to add before we leave?
No, wrap it up.
Well, thank you. Well, this is we appreciate it. This has been a fun podcast. We've just gotten to reminisce a little bit, as well as just walk through stages, and so now we're getting to experience with our grandkids. So we'll let you know how that's going as things go on. And so in the meantime, as always, parents, go be crazy. crazycoolfamily.com.